No one knows what the Utah Jazz should do about Lauri Markkanen. Well, everyone has an opinion, but they're not the same. It's next on Locked On Jazz. Bum 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 pow.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, coming to you from Las Vegas. Here's what we got for you on today's show. The latest from Shams, two different reports, one written, one audio about what the Jazz are doing with Lauri Markkanen. And then I'm in Vegas at Summer League, and the number one conversation everyone wants to have with me, what do you think the Jazz are going to do with Lauri? Which I then answer every single person with, what do you think they should do? And it's pretty interesting how there's absolutely no consensus from anyone on what the Jazz should do about it. We'll talk about all those things, which is better than talking about last night's Summer League game. The Jazz were brutal. The Taylor Hendricks alarm buttons are going off for lots of fans. We'll talk about it. A little bit, some interesting notes on shot selection in the NBA for individual players as well. That's all coming up on today's show. I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. And to the everydayers out there, so great to say hi to so many of you in the arena last night. There were two brothers that came up to me at the end of the night who had literally listened from the very beginning, dropped me a note a long time ago about how they lived in different states and that this was how they stayed connected. It was super cool to meet them. After the game, met a bunch of kids as well. It is a fun environment. Just rode the elevator with a nice woman from Virginia who brought her younger brother out as a present to come to Summer League. So it's a fun environment out here to be basketball junkies and be with everyone. Had a nice dinner with friends. Saw Kevin Pelton. Saw chat with Alex Jensen for a little while last night. Good old friend, and checked in, and so really wonderful. Saw Nate Duncan, who's just doing incredible work on the Dunked On podcast. Saw Jackson Gatlin of Locked On Rockets. Saw Katie Hendel, who's a brilliant writer. Saw Howard Beck. So all sorts of really talented people. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sports stops sporting like we want them to, but this summer FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com. All right, let's get the two different reports that Shams had yesterday on the Athletic, or call it the New York Times now, on the New York Times and in a report. So his first report was the Golden State Warriors are the most engaged team in the talks for Lauri, and that according to his sources, the proposal is around Moses Moody, multiple first-round picks, multiple pick swaps, multiple second-round picks. The Jazz have, however, asked for a bulk of young talent and capital from the Warriors, including Moody, Kuminga, Podziemski, along with picks, which has been a non-starter for Golden State. We should discuss probably tomorrow Moody, Kuminga, or Podziemski, the different value of all three of them. So we'll probably I haven't researched that well enough. I mean, I can probably do off the top of my head, but how about I do it a little bit better tomorrow? So that's the first one. The second one is the other report he had is that it requires about $15 million in cap space for the Jazz to get him up to $33 million. I'm hearing it could take more than $15 million of cap space to get Lauri's extension done. That the extension's getting more expensive by the day. That would be kind of one other thing that's kind of being mentioned about by people. I don't know if they're in the know or if that's just an opinion. That's kind of hard to sometimes tell. Then Shams went on a show with Amin El Hassan at Summer League and said if Golden State put a Brandon Podziemski 3 first-round picks, 4 unprotected pick swaps 3 or 4 second-round picks. At that point, the host kind of interrupts him, but you're getting the idea of what people think the Jazz have to get in this deal. Kuminga, he went on to say, Kuminga's a name, but I think from everything I'm told, the Jazz are more focused on Podziemski and the inclusion in the deal, all the picks being in the deal. And I think from the Warriors' perspective, it's Podziemski, but then that's not all the picks. It's all the picks, and they're not going to be Podziemski. So Moody, Podziemski, and Kuminga are the 3 names. We kind of knew that. I'm not sure how much of this is like brand new information, but it does. I mean, this is a haul, right? If this is, 3 first-round picks, multiple pick swaps, that's a haul from various people, various pick from the Warriors. Now, you also have to decide where you think the Warriors are going to be and what those picks are worth, right? We've talked about this a lot on what is a pick really worth. They sound sexy and they sound great, and pick swaps are really interesting. But let's kind of make sure we understand a few things and how you'd have to structure some things here. So let me start with just, a pick. After the 11th pick of the draft, any pick you're getting, and assuming the Warriors aren't going to be one of the bottom 10 teams in the NBA with the appeal of that market, you kind of 50-50 if you're getting a rotation player. Now, it's a shot, right? Every single time it's a shot for something to happen, and that's what you're really paying for is the shot. But the fact is that's not, it's not a guaranteed player. In fact, it's after the 11th pick of the draft, it's 50-50 if you're getting a rotation player. It's less to get a starter. And so if you're getting, 4 picks, the odds are you're getting 2 rotation players out of it. Now, pick swaps are interesting. But here's what's really interesting with the Jazz on pick swaps. So 2025 pick swap to us would be worth nothing, right? We know Golden State will be better than us in 2025 if we've just traded Lauri. In 2026, we have a pick swap with both Cleveland and Minnesota, which if we trade Lauri, also both of those become valueless. I mean, there's very little chance we would be better than them. We get to 2027, that's a year where we could do a pick swap with the Warriors, and maybe Steph gets old, and you never know. We've brought it together. They're like, you never know. And we have Cleveland's pick that year. We have Minnesota's pick that year. We have the Lakers pick that year. And then we could have a pick swap in 2027. In 2028, we already have a pick swap with Cleveland. You can't pick swap more. I mean, you get the best of the 3. So it's an option. 2029, we have Cleveland's pick. We have Minnesota's protected pick, and we have our pick. So that's another year you could do a pick swap. And then 2030, we have our own pick. So when you start to talk about these pick swaps with the Warriors, you're probably only pick swapping 2027 and 2029. And then you're going to want the Warriors picks for 2028, 2030. I don't know that you really want and maybe 2026. So you're trying to get the Warriors picks for 2026, 2028, 2030. I guess you're shooting for 32 as well, maybe 3 first-round picks, depending on how many players you get. And you're pick swapping 27, 29, 31. That's kind of the way you lay it out. The one thing that does get interesting from a Jazz perspective here is after, in 28, we only have 1 pick. That would give us 2 picks. In 30, that would give us 2 picks. In 2026, that would give us 2 picks. In every other draft, we only have in those drafts, 26, 28, and 30, we only have 1 pick. And so maybe this gets interesting in the sense that you're able to get 2 picks in those drafts. We'll do Kuminga, Podziemski, or Moody tomorrow. Imagine if I was running for president and they took every time I misspoke. Be really disastrous. However, the most interesting part of Summer League to me, and I was there for, there for the night, and I'll be there all day today, so I'll have more tomorrow, was how the different opinions. And I'm going to share, without obviously using any names, 2 people who I really respect in this business. One of them I've probably known for as long as anyone I've known. And the 2 different opinions on what the Utah Jazz should do with Lauri Markkanen. Next, we're just getting started on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. Just was there yesterday dropping off our Hyundai Santa Fe for its regular service, getting it ready to head back to college with my daughter. It is, the Murdochs have such great deals. The 2024 Hyundai Santa Fe is kind of eye-catching if you haven't seen it yet. And the 2024 Hyundai Ioniq 5, which is the electric car, which we own, is now $199 per month for 24 months or 0% for up to 60. So some pretty interesting deals there. I looked at that Ioniq 6 again. I've just loved that car from the very beginning. I'm driving the Palisade right now. It is truly outstanding. They have $3,000 off that. So there are some fabulous deals going on at Murdoch right now, Murray and in Linden and in Logan. And it's a great opportunity for you to check out Hyundai cars. I've bought 3 of them. That's all I can tell you. The Murdochs, Blake's one of the best people I know, and they want to make sure they give you great experience. So why don't you give them a call today? Or actually, how about this? Why don't you email me, and I'll set you up with a VIP meeting at any of those 3 locations. Hit me at dlock09@gmail.com, and we'll make sure that you get the VIP meeting that you deserve at Murdoch Hyundai. Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. When you email me at dlock09@gmail.com so I can set up your VIP meeting, please give me the location, and then I can set you up and have it so when you walk in, you know exactly who you're talking to and have it all set up. Thank you. It is over at Murdoch Hyundai. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors, making sure that your ride or die is ready to go. Millions of parts for your MVP. And when I say millions of parts, I am not kidding. Are you ready for this? You've probably heard this because you're an everydayer. But 122 million parts. Well, how do I possibly sift through all those parts at eBay Motors? Because eBay Motors has the guaranteed fit. Your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time. That's right. Your money back, because eBay Motors wants to make sure you're burning rubber, not cash, with all the parts you need, all the prices you want. It makes it easier for your car to win the MVP. Bring home the huge wins and keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Motors guaranteed fit is only for U.S. customers. ebaymotors.com. Thanks so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available for you on all podcasting apps as well as on YouTube. Thumbs up if you think the Jazz should keep Lauri Markkanen. Comment section, let me know if you think you should trade him. Here's on YouTube, or hit me on X. Okay, here's 2 conversations. So I walk in the arena last night. See Jackson Gatlin of Locked on Rockets first, tip of the hat. Then see Howard Beck, Katie Handel, who I mentioned. Katie Handel's a fabulous basketball writer, by the way. If you do not know her, basketball poetry, I think, is her newsletter, one of the best out there. I subscribe to very few newsletters. I subscribe to hers. Because it's great. So I walk in, see a buddy, longtime NBA friend. And then he's like, what are you going to do with Lauri? And I was like, I don't know. What do you think we should do? You got to move him. Your timeline's off. You have to move Lauri. Your timeline's off. I was like, well, like, what do you mean? And he's like, and I was like, well, I said, Danny has said in a press conference that he doesn't want to be in a position where when they actually get somebody that they're still 3 or 4 years away. He's like, you're still 3 or 4 years away anyway. You got to move Lauri right now. I was like, well, what do you get for him? He's like, you get 3 or 4 picks and a bunch of pick swaps and maybe a player. And then we discussed Jonathan Kuminga, who I have mixed opinions on because he can't really shoot. I like players who can shoot. And Boston had 8 players who take 3 threes a game, and they just won the NBA title. And I think everyone on your roster's got to be able to shoot, or at least most of the 7 or 8, 9 players who play. And so we went back and forth. And his argument very definitively was, you have to move Lauri now because it doesn't match your timeline. You're going to sign him to a bunch of money. You're not going to be able to win with him right now against where the West is. And so therefore, the right move is to move Lauri. So great conversation. Interesting perspective. Then I went and bumped into a guy I've known for another long time, maybe the longest, NBA person I've known for a long time. Super hard worker, great guy, very impressive. And I was like, what do you think? He's like, you keep him. It's a talent league. How can you possibly give up talent? It's hard to acquire talent. You've got talent. You go get it. You keep talent. And I was like, well, I just talked to a guy who said, well, what about the fact that our timeline is, if you go to the mat in this league, he said, if you go to the mat in this league, you could stay there forever. He said, do you know how hard it is to get off the mat in this league? And he said, I'll tell you what, I believe that you get talent, you keep talent, and you're better off building from that spot than you are going all the way to the mat and going to the bottom. And he's like, and his big point was, it's a talent league. You have one of the most talented players in the league. You keep them and you work around that, and then you continue to try to build from, he didn't say the middle, but he was like, his point was the amount of pieces that you need if you go to the bottom to be able to work your way back up is enormous. This is two people, and probably for the sake of the funness of the conversation, making them sound more immediate than they were. It wasn't like the first 5 minutes I walked in the arena that both of them, but just conceptually, imagine that. You literally walk in, see one guy, walk over literally 5 steps, next day. Not totally the way it worked, but totally different perspectives. 2 guys paid by the league, 2 guys super highly well-respected, 2 guys who I think are both really, really good at their jobs, 2 people I love talking the game with, 2 people who I respect their opinions, and they totally divergent, which should make your chat room on Reddit and your conversation on the YouTube chat room here much more conciliatory, frankly. It's a little bit whether the cabbie should have been charging me or not if you follow me on Twitter. It was literally 50-50. So it is, what jumped out to me is it's not black and white at all. And then I do think it gets into, from there, I think it gets into some of the idiosyncrasies that only probably Justin Zanuck, Danny Ainge, Ryan Smith, and the staff know. So the first question is, what's it going to take to extend Lauri, and is he perfectly willing to be extended? And if he is, then that allows for the second guy's opinion to become involved, right? If there's any part of Lauri that's not willing to be extended, then the first guy's conversation is all that matters. The second one in this conversation is, do you care? So if you follow the story, because of Lauri's extension date with Cleveland, and because, or signing day with Cleveland, and because of where the trade deadline is 6 months after that, Lauri can't sign until August 6th. The trade deadline is February 7th. If Lauri were to wait to sign the deal on August 8th, he's not tradable this year. Is that prohibitive? Would the Jazz say to Lauri, hey, by the way, here's your deal, but you have to sign on the 6th? That's pretty brutal, because that's basically saying, hey, you sign your deal, but we're planning to trade you somewhere you have no control over. If I'm a player, I'm probably not doing that. In fact, the Jazz offered on the 6th. I'm sure everyone knows what the offer would be by the 6th. And Lauri decides to wait till the 7th or 8th. Are the Jazz going to just pull the offer and say, actually, it's not valid anymore? I don't think so. The other question would just be a little bit of draft asset that's actually available. I haven't, in that conversation we just had, we outlined the years the Jazz would probably want. I actually didn't go back to go look at what the Warriors have available. They're a little restricted in what some of their picks are. And so if, it's suddenly the Jazz have a strategy that they want 2 picks every year, and this trade would allow them to do that, does that somehow make it more appealing and a better trade than it would be otherwise? The Warriors seem to have every pick available but 2030. That 2030 is protected. You could actually take that pick with the protection. It goes to Washington at 21 through 30. It goes to the Warriors at 1 through 20. You could actually take that 30 pick with the protection and pick swap the others. So for your discussion and where you are, how fun. None of us have to make the heart-wrenching decision. None of us have to figure out what's right. We get to just discuss it. And I'll continue to discuss it for the next 2 days and share what people are saying. But it's pretty fascinating to me that, like, it's absolutely 50-50 in the people I talk to. And definitively set 50-50. In other words, their opinion, as is often the case in this league, is not nuanced. It is definitive. They have a philosophy. They have a belief. That's what they think. And that's the right thing to do. Pretty fascinating. Give me your thoughts on the chat room on what you think the Jazz should do. Thumbs up if you think the Jazz should keep Lauri and believe in what the second guy said, that, like, you just don't go to the mat in this league. You're better off building while you're from the middle, developing and putting it together. You go to the mat, you could be there for a long, long time. And the first guy says, you got to trade Lauri. The timeline just doesn't match. I'm not sure I'm a believer in timeline, by the way. I would have to say that. That's the one thing I've never quite understood, because there's an implication of timeline that you kind of know what's going to happen when. His point, though, he thinks we'll be bad for 3 years regardless of what's pulled off. The next analysis we're going to do later this week is the big game hunting missed over the last 2 years. Where have we met? Porzingis, Drew Holiday, Mikal Bridges. We've tried to get involved in some big game hunting, and we haven't got them. Why not? And what's causing that? It's good for the discussion. All right, last night's game by the Jazz was frankly brutal, but we're going to talk about it next on Locked On Jazz. Today's edition of Locked On Jazz is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel's doing great stuff this summer because, sports are a little different this time of year. But FanDuel.com has you all fired up and ready to go. FanDuel doing all sorts of great things for you with bonuses and little gifts and little ways to make everything extra while the sporting world slows down a little bit. This summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the MLB and of Locked On. By the way, you can bet Summer League if you want to. They have all sorts of fun little all-star game bets if you want it. The National League and the American League. I believe the National League is favored. The MVP odds are Shohei Ohtani. NBA Open Championship gets going. Scottie Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, Xander Schauffele, Colin Morikawa are the four favorites to win. Bryson DeChambeau sitting at 6th. Summer League today, I'm going to go watch Phoenix. Our former Jazz assistant Vince LaGarza is coaching that one. And Indiana is favored by 5.5 in that game. Over in the WNBA tonight, the Chicago Sky face the Aces in a high-level matchup. It's why Angel Reese was at the game last night. The Aces are a 13-point favorite. That one's here in Vegas. Storm favored over the Sparks as well. All at FanDuel.com. Go check it out. Thank you very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps for your second listen. Check out Locked On Sports Today or check out The Big 6 in 60. Kind of love it. It's a show in which we get you the top 6 shows in top 6 sports show stories of the day and run through them with the local experts of Locked On. You're way more knowledgeable than you would be anything else, all in an hour. Plus, today might be a better day for Locked On Sports Today, which is a shorter version of the biggest stories today, giving you kind of a recap of all that's taking place. All right. Jazz were bad last night. Let's just be totally honest about it. They had 19 turnovers and trailed 48-25 at the half. They just kept dribbling into traffic and having nowhere to go and throwing it away, and it was just a mess. Cody Williams and Taylor Hendricks were both scoreless at halftime. Kyle Filipowski just, looked like his confidence was zapped. Turnovers everywhere. All right, happens. We're not going to freak out. Those are all facts, by the way. I'd love to pretend and try to tell you that something else happened last night, but I was in the arena. I saw it. If you were watching it, you saw it, and there's zero reason to freak out about it or zero reason to lie to you about it. It was ugly. It was really quite horrendous. They were down 12-0 to start, and then they actually played the second half better. And what's great about Summer League is you kind of didn't – the scores, obviously like Sean Sheldon, Jazz head coach, the Summer League would like to get his team to be able to make it to the semifinals or finals and be in that environment and those kind of things. So the box score line that jumps out to everyone today and is all over everything, and I can't blame anyone, is that Taylor Hendricks went 0 for 6 last night, 0 for 3 from 3, with 3 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 assists. And you would hope that in his second year that Taylor Hendricks would come into Summer League and have like a pretty big impact. I think, I'm not certain, but I think as the talent gets less good around him, Taylor's going to struggle more. At this point, Taylor's game is completely based on the other players around him. His handle is not good enough to make plays himself. If he's going to get out and run, it's because the Jazz got to stop defensively and did something. And if he's going to be able to kind of get where he can't get open shots, it's because other guys on the floor's going to be spaced, the defense rotates and breaks down. And as Keontae doesn't play, and as Bryce Sensabaugh gets hurt, and as Jason Preston leaves the team for personal reasons, all of a sudden, the talent on the floor is less than it was before, and that hurts Taylor. Taylor at this point is, I think, a player who is dependent to be around good players. Taylor will play better when he's playing around John Collins and Colin Sexton and Lauri Markkanen and Keontae George, maybe even in the starting lineup. Like, that's that. Now, it is still disappointing, and there are, I think in all of this, you're trying to watch moments and flashes. I thought Cody Williams had a bunch of moments and flashes last night. I thought Filipowski in the second half looked a little better after a pretty brutal first half and had a moment or two of flashes. Isaiah Collier, one day after having 1 turnover, had 7. So I'm really curious to see what he does next. I go back to what Evan Brad said to me last year, Jazz assistant coach, about rookies. I don't care what they do the first time. It's the second time I want to see how they react to it. And Taylor is interesting to me because you want him to be a little bit more aggressive and more confident, but it seems as though that bends off him getting a good look early and making a shot and kind of getting into the flow that way for him to be able to get that feeling. And that's dependent on other people. And when the talent around you gets less good, then he's probably less able to do that. So, the only thing on Taylor that I would say, and I feel like this about Summer League, box scores are misleading. You're watching for moments and things. And like Cody Williams last night had a bunch of moments. He had a baseline drive where he moved it and dunked it. He came off 1 foot again, got another dunk. He had some open moments. He hit a pull-up jumper. Isaiah Collier had some moments where he really pushed. He had an open floor player where nobody could stay in front of him. Like, there were all the little flashes of Collier's 7 turnovers. Disappointing, but I thought, like, there's a bunch of stuff. The one on Taylor that is actually jumping out to me is how often he's off balance. And what's interesting to me about that is if you look at him, he looks dramatically different. I'll give our strength and conditioning staff credit. Bryce Sensabaugh and Taylor Hendricks look way, way different than what they looked like before. Taylor's lower body is just so much thicker and stronger and makes you believe that maybe he could put on another 10 pounds. What's interesting to me is that with this obvious, clearly increased strength, his balance does not seem to be better. He's off balance and jostled and moved around, and when he's trying to make a play, like, more so than seems natural to me. Again, I kind of talked about this yesterday. It's got to be super careful that, like, the minute you begin to see something, it, like, just kind of comes back to you all the time, regardless, and you're missing all the times it doesn't happen. I really tried to watch the lateral stuff I talked about yesterday, and I didn't think he had a bad night moving laterally, so that now makes me begin to wonder whether I just saw it a few times and it kind of went into my head. But that would be the one thing I've noticed. But the positive is that he's so much stronger. I mean, our strength and conditioning staff really did an incredible job with both he and Bryce Sensabaugh. Looks totally different than they looked before. All right, Jazz have the day off today, and then they go back. They will battle it up with on Wednesday, and I will watch that game as well. We'll be back with you from Vegas tomorrow. I'm going to head over to the arena, watch a bunch of games today. Super fun setting. So thank you very much for tuning into today's edition of Locked on Jazz.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.